Good morning. Today we are going to work on, just checking to make sure my pen works. Okay, today we're working on CO27. I can use rates and unit rates to compare to numbers or quantities. So we're going to use what we know about ratios, and now we're moving into unit rates. So it's building off of those ratios. So a rate compares a unit to another unit. An example would be minutes per hour. Or we could say miles per hour, like in a car. So if you're driving, how many miles per hour can you go? So let's go with miles instead of minutes. I had a hard time reading the book here. So we're gonna go how many miles per hour? How far can we go driving in 1 hour? This is similar to a ratio. So building off of what we have just been learning. So we're going to write each statement as a rate. Then we're going to write an equivalent rate. Knowing what we know about equivalent fractions, equivalent ratios, we're going to do the same thing with an equivalent rate. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So you can mow 2 lawns in 3 hours. So we're going to write that so it looks like the fraction like we had with our ratio. We've got 2 lawns. The first one you always put on top, second one you're going to put on bottom, and yes, we put our labels. It is important to know which number is the lawns and which number is the hours. So 2 lawns for every 3 hours. Now to do an equivalent rate, I can multiply the top and the bottom by that same scale factor. 2 times the 2 equals 4 lawns. 3 times the 2 equals 6 hours. Again, put your labels. So you write your original rate, you write the scale factor that you are multiplying both the top and the bottom by the same number, and then you make sure you put your labels on that equivalent rate. Let's do one more together. You can eat 16 eggs in 12 hours. So the 16 eggs goes on top. The 12 hours goes on bottom. So we eat 16 eggs every 12 hours. That is a lot of eggs. I do not recommend. Now to find our equivalent rate, we multiply it by the same scale factor, or you could divide it by the same scale factor. Just like with ratios, just like with fractions, you can multiply up, or you could divide down. So we could divide by both these numbers by 2. We can simplify. That would be equivalent, as long as you are doing the same thing to the top as what you're doing to the bottom. So here we have 16 eggs times 2 gives us 32 eggs. And 12 hours times 2 gives us 24 hours. Again, remembering to put your labels. And again, 32 eggs in one day, way too many eggs. Do not recommend. All right, you are going to do the next 4 on your own, writing out your original rate and then writing an equivalent rate. Please put the scale factor that you are multiplying by. Make sure you are putting those labels. The second part of this objective is now talking about the unit rate. So instead of just a rate in general, the unit rate gets a little more specific. A unit rate is a rate, a rate with a denominator of 1. Always, always, always. If it is a unit rate, that denominator needs to be a 1. You take your regular rate and you simplify down to a 1 for the denominator. Remembering, when we simplify down, we are doing the same thing to the bottom that we do to the top. Always, always, always. Some of us are still working on that concept of whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. Remember that. So if we have 100 miles in 2 hours, I can drive 100 miles every 2 hours. Well, how far can I go in 1 hour? That unit rate, my denominator, I have to go down to 1 hour. So how do I go from 2 down to 1? I'm going to divide it by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So what I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 100 divided by 2 gives me the 50 miles. I can go 50 miles every hour. So you're driving on the highway, you see those speed limit signs that say 60 miles per hour. That is the unit rate. That's how fast you can go on the highway. So this one's telling me I go 50 miles every hour. Let's look at our next one. It is $8.88 for 4 cartons. I want to know how much it's going to be for magic number, unit rate, 1 carton. So I always, always, always have to get that 1 on the bottom. How do I go from 4 down to 1? I am going to divide it by that 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So I have $8.88 divided by 4. So that gets me 8 divided by 4 is 2. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So it is $2.22 for 1 carton. Now, if you have that whole number as your denominator, you are going to divide down. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. What gets tricky is when we have a fraction as our denominator. That fraction is less than 1. So we want to bring it up to 1. For the 2 and the 4 that we had up above, we were dividing down to 1. Now when it's a fraction, we have to multiply up to 1 because that fraction, again, is less than 1. So we're going to multiply up. So what do we multiply a half by to get it up to be 1 whole? So we have 1/2. We're going to multiply that by the opposite, by 2 over 1. So when we multiply it by the opposite, we get 1 times 2 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. And we know when we simplify 2 over 2 down, that gives me 1 whole. So when you have a fraction on the bottom, you will multiply, and what we're going to multiply by is that denominator. So our denominator of that fraction is 2, so I'm going to multiply by 2 on the top and the bottom. Whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So 1/2 times 2 gives me 1 whole cup. Then 5 prunes times 2 gives me 10 prunes. So in half a cup, I only have 5 prunes. 1 whole cup is bigger, so I'm going to have more prunes because it is bigger. So it makes sense that I go from 5 prunes to 10 prunes. again, because it's bigger. So whenever you see that fraction on the bottom of your unit, of your rate, to turn it into that unit rate, you multiply by your denominator to get it to one whole. And whatever you multiply the denominator by, you multiply your numerator by. So if you have a whole number as your bottom, you divide down to 1. If you have a fraction as your bottom, you have to multiply up to 1. So it can be a little confusing, but just remember, whole numbers and fractions, you're going to do different things to get to that one whole. On the bottom, we have a question, a word problem. Thomas can run 15 laps in 5 minutes, Jan can run 24 laps in 6 minutes, and Carol can run 18 laps in 9 minutes. Who is running the fastest? Use the unit rate to explain how you know. So you need to find the unit rate for each person. What is their unit rate? And then figure out which one is the fastest unit rate. They can go the farthest distance in 1 minute. Okay. So again, the rates, you just put the first number over the second number. To find the equivalent rate, you multiply or divide by the same scale factor. Whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. When we are doing unit rates, we take that rate and we divide it down, if it's a whole number, to that 1. We always, always, always want 1 as a denominator for a unit rate. If that bottom has a fraction, you multiply it up to 1 whole. If you have questions, you can check with a friend. I will be back tomorrow so we can go over any lingering questions that we still have. If you finish your work before class is done, remember we have Khan Academy that's due on Thursday. We have math packet number 4 that you can be working on. There is stuff for you to work on. This is calm, quiet work time. Make sure you are being responsible in getting all of your math done. I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to like and subscribe. See you tomorrow.